Welcome to Zeph's house. Come in out of the dark and pull the door shut behind you. Tonight's tale is called The Tree. The post had everything you'd want. GPS coordinates, directions from the nearest highway, photos of the clearing from every angle. A crystal clear creek, a natural fire pit ringed with stones, flat ground for tents, and mountains framing it all like something off a postcard. 47 upvotes, a dozen comments, every one of them glowing. Best spot I've ever camped. Had it completely to ourselves, already planning a return trip. We found it on a Thursday night, and by Saturday morning we were packed. Me, Danny, and Zeph. Danny's real name is Daniel, but nobody's called him that since middle school. Zeph is short for Severin, the kind of name that sounds made up but isn't. The three of us had done a camping trip together every February since college, 8 years running. This year it was my turn to find the spot, and I'd never seen coordinates get that kind of love from people who clearly knew what they were doing. Danny's buddy Jake dropped us at the trailhead around noon, 3-mile hike in. He'd be back Tuesday at 8, 3 nights, 4 days. If you get eaten by bears, I'm keeping your gear, Jake said. No signal out there, Danny reminded him. So if we're not at the trailhead Tuesday morning, I'll wait an hour, call search and rescue, then keep your gear. We laughed, shouldered our packs, and started walking. The hike was easy, a well-marked trail for the first 2 miles, then a fainter path that matched the directions exactly. We crossed the creek twice, skirted a ridge, and dropped into a valley that opened into the clearing like a curtain being pulled back. It was everything the photos promised, better. The creek threw the afternoon light around like diamonds. The fire pit was right where the pictures showed it. Flat ground, good cover, the mountains holding the whole thing in their hands. But there was one thing the photos didn't show. The tree. It stood at the far edge of the clearing, a massive oak, ancient and gnarled, easily the biggest tree I'd ever seen outside a national park. Its trunk was wider than a car. Its branches reached out over the clearing like arms, the kind of tree that makes you feel small, the kind of tree that was old when your grandparents were born. How did the post not mention this thing? Zeph said. He was right. A dozen photos, paragraphs of description, and the most striking thing in the entire clearing, the poster hadn't said a word about it. I pulled up the post on my phone. I'd saved it offline since there was no signal. Scrolled the photos. Same creek, same rocks, same fire pit, same fallen log by the water. No tree. Not out of frame, not shot around. The photos were taken from angles where the tree should have been impossible to miss. In one, the photographer stood almost exactly where the oak was now, and behind him, in the picture, there was nothing but open sky. Photoshop, Zeph offered. Why would anyone Photoshop out a tree? Nobody had an answer. Zeph was the one who found the carvings. We were setting up tents when he wandered to the oak, running a hand along the bark. Hey, come look at this. Names, carved into the wood everywhere, starting at about waist height and going up, way up, higher than anyone could reach without a ladder. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Some small and careful, others gouged deep and fast, like whoever held the knife had been in a hurry. It's like a guest book, Danny said. People have been coming here a long time. Zeph traced one of the older ones near the top of his reach. Look how high they go. I scanned the names. Jimmy, Terry, Charlie, Robert, Dale, Susan. Ordinary names, ordinary people, leaving their mark on an old tree the way hikers have since the beginning of time. Honestly, it was reassuring. Proof that other people had found this place, loved it, and left. Nothing about it felt wrong. Not yet. I woke at 2 in the morning and didn't know why. The fire had burned to embers. The creek was a low murmur, night sounds, normal sounds. Then I heard the voices. At first I thought Danny or Zeph had gotten up, low, casual talk like two guys sitting around a fire. I almost rolled over. But then a third voice, and a laugh. 3 voices, and none of them sounded like my friends. I lay perfectly still. This was all Charlie's idea, you know. Hey, the coordinates checked out. Blame the internet. Terry thought it was a good idea, too. Easy, comfortable laughter. Old friends giving each other hell. Danny, I breathed. Barely a sound. Yeah, his voice came back tight from the next tent. I hear it. Zeph? What is that? Jimmy, come on, what'd you bring? Jimmy? Jim? Silence. Not a fade, not a trailing off. The voices just stopped, like someone pulled a plug. 1 second, 3 men talking around a fire. The next, nothing but the creek and the wind and my own heart slamming in my ears. I lay awake a long time. Eventually exhaustion won. In the morning, we stood around the dead fire and tried to make it make sense. Mass hallucination, Danny offered. All 3 of us heard the same names. And someone's messing with us. Bluetooth speaker in the woods. Zeph shook his head. No signal, no power. And who hikes 3 miles out here to prank random campers? He was already walking to the tree. He stopped, scanning the bark. Jimmy, he said. Terry. Charlie. He pointed. 3 names, grouped together, carved in the same hand. The same 3 names we'd heard in the dark. We should have left. I know that now. But here's the thing about fear in daylight. It shrinks. The sun was up, the creek was sparkling, and what had felt like absolute terror at 2 a.m. now felt like a story we'd tell at a bar. And there were rational explanations. Sound carries in a valley. Maybe there'd been other campers upstream once and the wind brought their voices down. Maybe they'd camped this very spot, found their own names on the tree, talked about it around their own fire. So we stayed. And the day was incredible. We fished the creek and Zeph pulled out a rainbow trout that had no business being that big. We hiked the ridge to a view that ran for miles. We cooked over the fire and told stories and laughed, and it felt like every camping trip we'd ever taken, distilled to its best parts. By sunset, the voices felt like a dream. That's when Danny had the idea. We should carve our names. He cut his first, then handed me the knife, then Zeph. Danny, 211, Mark, 211, Zeph, 211. 3 fresh names at the bottom of a century of them. We stepped back to admire it, and Zeph said, "Wait." "What?" "The dates." I looked at what I'd just carved. February 11th. Then I looked up at all the other names, all the other dates. February 11th. Every single one. The knife was still in my hand. My name was in the wood. And the sun was going down. Night 2 came easy. Tired legs, a good fire, stars out. The weirdness felt like something that had happened to someone else. I was asleep before my head hit the pillow. At 17 past 2, the voices came back. Same voices, Charlie, Terry, Jimmy. But different now. I saw it, I'm telling you. Where? Down by the water. He was just standing there. Charlie, you saw it, didn't you? Tell him. A pause, then flat. I saw something move. Probably a deer. You're full of it. You do this every time. It might have worked when we were kids, but silence. The same abrupt nothing, the same plug pulled. But this time, the fear in those voices hung in the air like smoke. These weren't men laughing around a fire. These were men who'd seen something and couldn't agree on what. And then they were gone. We met at the fire. Nobody had to say a word. We'd all heard it. I looked at Danny. Danny looked at Zeph. Zeph looked at the tree. Night 1, they were happy, he said, quietly. Night 2, they were scared. What happens on night 3, Danny whispered. Nobody answered. We didn't hike out. 3 miles doesn't sound far until it's dark and the trail's uneven and there's no signal. One twisted ankle and you're stranded on the trail instead of in a clearing with a fire. Jake was coming at 8. We just had to make it 12 hours. We spent the day packing everything, keeping the fire fed, fishing, not because we were hungry, but to have something to do with our hands, something normal. It's just voices, Danny said, watching his line drift. 2 nights of voices. We heard some weird stuff, and we're leaving tomorrow. That's the end of it. You're right, I said. People have carved their names on that tree for 100 years. That means people have been leaving here for 100 years. Right, so we'll be fine. But he didn't look at the tree when he said it. None of us did. We built the fire bigger that last night. Fed it everything we could spare. Extra wood, cardboard, a broken camp chair. The flames went 8 feet up, shoving the dark back to the tree line. We sat in a tight circle, close enough to touch. The tree was behind us, and I could feel it there the way you feel someone watching you from across a room. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2. Nothing. Maybe it's done, Danny said. Maybe, Zeph said. By 2:30, the fire was dying. We'd burned through everything. The light pulled back like a tide, shadows creeping in from the edges. 3:17. Guys, Zeph said. He was staring past the fire, past the dying light, toward the creek. Something was standing at the edge of the clearing. At first I thought it was a stump, a shadow, my eyes playing tricks in the low light. Then it moved, slightly, a tilt of the head. It was a woman, old, ancient maybe, dressed in robes, heavy, dark fabric that hung to the ground, a hood pulled back just enough to show her face, pale skin, deep lines, eyes that caught the firelight and held it. Hello, Danny called, his voice cracked. Ma'am, are you okay? She didn't answer. She didn't move. She just stood where the light met the dark, watching us with an expression I couldn't read. Not anger, not hunger. Something older than both. Patience. What do you want? I asked. She tilted her head, that same slow, bird-like consideration. Then her eyes began to glow. Not a reflection, not the fire. A light from inside, cold and white and ancient, filling them until they were 2 stars burning in that weathered face. She raised one hand, slow, deliberate, palm toward us, and every light went out. The fire, the embers, the stars, the moon, everything. Dark so complete, I couldn't see my own hands, couldn't see Danny, couldn't see Zeph. I opened my mouth to scream. Jake pulled into the trailhead at 7:45 Tuesday morning, 15 minutes early because he'd always been the responsible one. He waited until 8, then 8:30, then 9. At 9:15, he started up the trail. He reached the clearing at 10. The tents were still up, packs inside, sleeping bags rolled out, cooler still half full. 3 camp chairs around a fire pit full of cold ash. Everything was there, except us. He found the fishing gear by the water, my phone in my tent, battery dead. Zeph's journal open to a page that said only, "The names are all the same date. No struggle, no tracks leading away, no blood, no torn fabric, nothing to say anything had gone wrong at all. Just an empty campsite in a beautiful clearing. And no tree." Jake stood in the middle of the clearing and turned a slow circle. Creek, ridge, fire pit, tents. No tree, no massive oak, no carvings, no 100 years of names, no dates. Just grass and sky and silence. Search and rescue looked for 6 days. They found nothing. The case went cold before it ever went warm. 3 weeks later, a man scrolling a camping forum passed a familiar post. GPS coordinates, detailed directions, beautiful photos of a clearing with a creek and mountains. The post had a new comment, posted that morning, from a username that belonged to a man who'd been missing for 23 days. One line: "Trust me, worth the hike." Thanks for stopping by Zeph's house. If this one stayed with you, do me a kindness. Leave a like and subscribe so the door is unlocked when you come back. There's always another tale waiting. Until then, mind the quiet.